good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are joining us today. Just want to extend a warm welcome to everybody. Very excited to be here to talk about a hot topic in the general data space, but to really sort of give it some relevance around data quality and around metadata management as well. So before we get into that topic, I just want to just highlight a couple of quick housekeeping notes. If you do have any questions at all, please feel free to add your questions to the Q&A sidebar or little Q&A box in your Zoom chat, and Marek and myself will be more than welcome to, more than happy, I should say, to answer them at any point during the session. We will leave time at the very end, hopefully 10 to 15 minutes, just to answer any questions that sort of crop up at the very end of the session. We'd also just like to highlight that, we are, ultimately sort of partnering up to, communicate all content, any personal information, and so forth will not be shared with any third parties. And you can also opt out if you wish not to further communicate with us. Now that I think we've sort of got the legalities and the housekeeping out of the way, let's move on to the purpose of the webinar. So today's discussion is the data fabric. We want to jump into what it means. I think a lot of people have heard of this topic before. I think there tends to be a little bit of confusion. I myself have really been curious about the data fabric and have been digging in just to, to learn more. And you tend to find that organizations like Gartner have highlighted it as a hot topic, a top technology trend, something that is sort of really a technology or a methodology or approach, perhaps something that Marek will get into in a little bit, as an area of focus. Again, not just necessarily for analytics and insights, but then also around areas of metadata management, data management in general, and as Marek will get into, data quality and data governance. So with that, I just wanted to perhaps just talk a little bit about the topic of data fabric, get into that a little bit, and then we can do some quick rounds of introduction.
Hi, James. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak on your forum about this. Happy to be here. So let's talk a little bit about Ataccama and data fabric and why we are even interested in this topic, right? So you may know Ataccama. We are a software company specializing in the data governance and data management, and providing tooling around those areas for more than a decade now, delivering hundreds and hundreds of successful projects with them. What we discovered when we were learning, like you do, about data fabric, especially from Gartner or from Forrester or other analyst companies, is that when you look at the definition of the data fabric, it is not necessarily a new concept, but it is a concept that just now is finally possible to implement, right? We as Ataccama, we were going in that direction for a long time now. It's just now somebody started to formalize the concept of a data fabric and this kind of automated architecture, or kind of a architecture design concept around the data fabric. But in general, it is a design concept that basically tells you how to build your data management and data governance backend in a way that provides automated data management and governance and benefits your users and your organization.
So that's, it's interesting because I caught myself as I started to say technology and then, swapped it out to methodology. I heard you say design.
Yeah.
Is it all of those things, I think a lot of people tend to get that confused as to, do you go out and buy yourself a platform and perhaps purchase licensing around a platform and then implement that and then you're good to go? Or
no, actually it's a methodology, right? So the data fabric itself says what the purpose of the data fabric is and how to build it, but it doesn't imply that it is one specific technology or even that you need to have all the pieces of data fabric from one technology stack. It implies that everything needs to be integrated, but for that you don't need one single tool. It's not a plug and play solution. It's a design concept, and as with all the architecture design concepts, it has technology part, which is we just define characteristics of the different pieces of technology that needs to be there to provide you with the desired outcome. And then it has more of an organizational people part, which describes the processes that needs to be implemented around the technology to be able to actually use it in an efficient way. Now, to get to the kind of a desired outcome, and I was talking about desired outcome before. Maybe we should start with that. What is a desired outcome of the data fabric, right?
Absolutely.
So if you look at the kind of a classic kind of a data management or data governance concept, right? Data fabric is a concept that basically makes high quality data instantly available to people, machines, and processes, and makes the data available in the speed, quality, and form required by their use case. That means that the data fabric concept operates with the assumption that automated technology actually understands your use case for a data, and based on that use case will provide you with the data you need. Now, if you look at the kind of a very, very high level view of the data fabric is a layer that that basically sits between your data and your data consumers, right? And it this layer, based on the consumer need, consumer use case, activates and provides you the data from a different sources, from a different different granularity and different way. So for example, if I have users that they are asking for campaign data, right? The data fabric provides them the campaign data by combining let's say user data and events data from the user actions, join them together, apply some transformation, applies policies, applies security implications based on your user persona, and provides you the data back. Now, for different types of use cases, different data are provided. It can be data for a model, in which case the data are constructed differently, or the data pipeline is actually constructed differently. And your user of the data or your consumer doesn't need to be person. It can also be automated process with different needs and characteristics, in which case data are also constructed differently.
Marek, what's interesting about this is, I think if anybody were to just kind of look at any one of these images, they would immediately sort of think of a classic sort of ETL process, or sort of think through what a fairly common data architecture would be, sort of having your sources in place, having some place to sort of load into a warehouse of some kind, perhaps, or some kind of data store, and then going out to your consuming applications. So I think, what is going to be really interesting is to understand then where the data fabric then fits into, I guess, to accelerate what you're looking to achieve once the data reaches the consumer.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a great question, because if you look at the very basic picture like this, and you're familiar with the basic processes in any large organizations, you will see that the people are currently building pipelines like this already, right? How it looks like, let's say in any organization, you have some kind of data management, data governance principles and setup that allows you to, let's say, start my project. Let's say I need to create a campaign data, or I need the data for my online campaign. What do? I describe what I need the data for, what kind of data I need. Then it goes to some people, right? And some people will, that with the knowledge of the data landscape, will tell you, okay, the data are there, and there. You need to basically put them together. Then it goes to the security review. Do you have an access to the data, right? Again, some security team goes in, looks at the available policies, see if they are applied correctly. Then goes through kind of a provisioning stage where you may have ETL developers or even DQ developers looking at the data, combining them together, cleaning them up, transforming, applying policies if needed, and then you will end up with a data product, right? Now, that is mostly manual work, and general idea is to automate as much of the manual work. Even now, you can see bits of pieces of that automated. Let's say you have a data catalog, so you can search for your data yourself, or you have automatic policies or dynamic masking applied on your data sources, and then policies are applied on its own. Data Fabric basically say to automate as much of this process as possible. And the way that Data Fabric operates, it should be able to construct these dynamic data pipelines on its own for you by just understanding your use case and parsing out your requirements. And there is a discussion how much how close to that general idea we can get right now. A lot of the Data Fabric implementations we've seen also include manual steps in the process, but the general idea is to minimize that manual interaction. What is also important is that specific data pipelines, and this is major difference from the standard approach, is that these generic data pipelines, they can change in time on its own. So for example, if your data source change, if the frequency of the data change, if the structure of your data change, your pipeline should be not affected, because Data Fabric constructs these pipelines dynamically. So therefore, if such change happens, your downstream processes are not affected. Your consumers are not affected. That's kind of an idea, like where is the difference between this and kind of standard ETL. Now, where this, how this kind of a magic works is important to understand. Again, very high level. Why this works is because Data Fabric itself operates on top of a lot of the metadata. We call it metadata knowledge graph, but just to explain very briefly, it is your basic metadata, centralized metadata store and provider, where you have metadata with relations between different metadata assets, and those metadata are both machine readable and user readable and editable. So this is kind of a what is behind the scenes. Machine readable because based on the metadata, machine basically constructs the data pipeline. Imagine that you have metadata about your sources, about structures, about the types of domains you have in the data, about even about the granularity, processing, timeliness of the data, and so on. And based on that metadata, then you map your use case. Let's say I need a campaign data to that metadata. Your use case is provided as additional metadata Basically, when you are describing what kind of data you need and for what purpose, you are creating metadata. And then in this metadata knowledge graph, this matching happens where your use case is matched to the available sources, and then dynamic data pipeline is created.
So I could just imagine, a case where it's using the same, like the campaign use case. You have marketing data sitting out somewhere in a store. You have your data catalog hooked in that is ingesting, information around that data to give you clarity around, let's say it's an email campaign, right? And there are customer segmentations, for example. There might be privacy concerns around, customer contacts. There might be, information, as you said, Marek, around, the structure of the data itself, or the profile of the data. All of that information, I think, is what you're saying is that is piped through the data catalog, and then essentially starts to stitch or map together relationships, between the data itself, and then any other sort of, let's say, sort of business context or processes and policies that will help to inform how the campaign is run and what insights you bring to bear. Is that kind of where we're going?
Yeah, that's where we are going now. Important part is also metadata capture, right? This would not work if you have some people updating the metadata, right? Metadata capture and automation of that process is kind of a cornerstone of the data fabric. The users actually should be seeing only outputs of that, but what is behind the scenes is that metadata knowledge graph should capture as much metadata automatically as possible. And I'm not saying only at metadata about sources and about technical structure of the sources, but also metadata about business domains, about operations, about outcomes. Let's say even from that campaign, when you have some kind of click-through ratio in a campaign, there's also metadata is important to know, right? And then you can correlate that to the data source. Maybe in the future, when you switch to another data source and click-through is dramatically different, that is, again, important information to have in a knowledge graph. And then you can apply either expert systems or machine learning algorithms on top of that kind of a fabric that you are building there, and start looking for relationships. Like if some data asset performs significantly better than other data assets correlated to the results, then you can assume that this is something that should be leveraged more, and maybe try to leverage it in a different processes in the future. And again, that changes in time. What we've seen in a lot of organizations when you have this kind of a traditional non-data fabric approach is, and you've probably seen this, right? Somebody 10 years ago created master data set that is being created daily, and whole organization is using it, and now nobody is checking whether it is still relevant, right? Because the whole organization is using it. And there are two problems. One, nobody is checking it. Second, even if you discover that this data asset needs to be updated or is not relevant, there are so many processes connected to it that you would need to manually change. That it's suddenly a huge undertaking to changing it. In a data fabric situation like that should be as automated as possible. Even either you decide something is not relevant and all the pipelines are updated automatically, or the system decides that something is not relevant and updates them for you. Now, or definitely depends on the types of policies you have on top of it. But you can combine kind of user controls with the data fabric, right? Let's say you can design or designate the very important or critical pipelines, and then say, okay, for critical pipelines, I don't want the system to change them automatically. I want to have control over it, right? It is totally possible in a data fabric as well.
I like that you brought that up, because I think a lot of people tend to think of, the data fabric as really just, serving up insights, across your integrated systems and, across your processes, policies for just general analytics. But something that you really brought to bear, I think, Marek, was the idea of a data quality fabric, and the idea of, accelerating the processes, accelerating the tasks and steps, with ensuring that you're getting a level of quality around your data, depending on what that data is, and sort of what the intent is. You might have a series of automated processes, or you may have ultimately some monitoring approaches or monitoring tools in place to ensure just that sort of consistent integrity and consistent level of quality. And where I think, sort of the idea of the data quality fabric comes in, is that you can, augment or accelerate that through some of these, some of the AI and ML now associated with building out knowledge graphs based upon, data attributes, and then even sort of going right back down to data access, and what data is provisioned to what consumers of the data, just based on sort of quick segmentation and knowledge that's brought to bear from the metadata knowledge graph. I was wondering if you could get into that a little bit around sort of the idea of the data quality fabric, and sort of what you formalized there with Ataccama.
Yeah. So and here's the kind of a basic idea. Data quality information is metadata, right? That's it seems basic, but there's a lot of people who don't realize that at the first. Data quality information is metadata, and as metadata, it belongs to that metadata knowledge graph, and it can be leveraged by the metadata knowledge graph. Now, this you need to combine with the automated kind of provisioning of the metadata for metadata knowledge graph. The only way this will work is if your data quality is automated as much as possible. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that you need to apply AI everywhere and just rely on AI. That is kind of a misconception that a lot of the new players on the market try to push. AI is not gonna fix everything, right? AI is a very useful tool for data quality. It will get you, on the way to the correct resolution. It is very good in detecting kind of seasonalities and events that are the traditional approaches a lot of the times either don't detect or always detects as a false positives. And it's very useful for that. But usually data quality should be combined with more traditional data quality that is automated through metadata. So for example, based on just the domain of the data, you can a lot of the times apply the data quality automatically. My favorite example is, for example, address data. Once I know that there is an address in my data set, I can very easily create and deploy data quality rule for validation and the standardization of addresses automatically, everywhere the address is. I don't need AI for that. I just need correctly mapped metadata. I need to have mapping between technical asset, seeing like columns in a database, and logical domain, in this case address, right? And in this case, my standard address validation standardization approach will actually give me way better results than any kind of AI process, right? Of course, for different kinds of data, if you have, let's say, financial analysis data, or if you have stock tickers, stuff like that, applying AI on that is necessary, and you need to do that as well. But you need to combine these two approaches. And the idea behind data quality fabric is that data quality will and is necessary for any successful data fabric implementation, right? Without that, the data pipelines it will be constructed for you will just start feeding you data that you cannot trust. If you cannot trust the data, or if the data are not of sufficient quality, you will just get bad results, right? Garbage in, garbage out applies here as well. So just to recap, data quality necessary for correct functioning of data fabric. Data quality is metadata, so both AI-driven and kind of a rule-driven data quality results should be saved in a metadata knowledge graph, and then knowledge graph needs to understand them and know what to do with them. That's kind of a important thing, right? Even in some cases, my good example, like for example, if you are doing online campaigns, or if you are doing physical campaigns, which is also common these days still, maybe based on that information, data fabric just filters out all the wrong addresses, so you don't pay unnecessarily for sending the campaign to the wrong addresses. It will just tell you this is 87% of your data, rest of it is not reliable. You can do a campaign on this 87% and you will get way better results, right? Because rest just doesn't make sense to use, right? So that's kind of an example here.
Yeah, this is helpful, and I think now is actually really the perfect time just to dig in a little bit around Ataccama and even introduce you, formally introduce you, Marek. So I realized that I got excited about the topic and just dove straight into the topic and the conversation without going through some formal introduction. So yeah, I do want to have Marek just talk a little bit about Ataccama and sort of where Ataccama plays in this space, particularly around data quality, but then where Marek, Marek Overchek is he's VP of the platform strategy for Ataccama. Marek has, really helped to formalize the data quality fabric concept as a thought leader around, modern data fabrics. And, Marek, I'm not sure how long you've been there at Ataccama, but just to highlight Ataccama a little bit, Ataccama has been consistently recognized internationally over the past few years by Gartner, Forrester, the Globee Awards, and others. Ataccama has brought a leading solution around data quality, but then also around data governance, master data management, and then most recently their award-winning Ataccama One platform, which I'd love to just basically talk about a little bit more to help our audience understand how the Ataccama One platform can, assist in, driving out in a very efficient manner this idea of a data fabric. So my first question is actually just around the Ataccama One platform. So the origin of that name, and what is the Ataccama One platform? What does that really entail, and why did we sort of come to that name of the One platform?
Sure. So Ataccama has kind of a long history. I've been there almost from the beginning, and we started as a pure play data quality tooling for enterprise size organizations. And that was back in the day where most of the data quality was run by writing SQL code, right? We brought kind of a more generic, reusable approach to this, and on top of the technology, we actually then built multiple different offerings. So we built data quality, that was the first. Then we built also reference data management offering and master data management offering, but it's built on top of the same base, right? And at the beginning, we were selling them kind of as integrated solution. But it was kind of a loose integration. It used the same technology base. It used reusable components, so you can reuse the different parts of configurations between these tools. But it was kind of a loose integration. Now, a couple of years ago, we built our own metadata layer underneath this to kind of integrate them all together in more closely. You can still have different parts of Ataccama deployed separately, but if you deploy them together, they are integrated through that metadata layer that we extended over the time to our metadata knowledge graph. But basically, the distinction between kind of a previous generation of tools and next generation of tools, the Ataccama one, distinguished that we are selling fully integrated solution with a common one metadata knowledge graph as a base that is seamlessly integrated with all of the components. So you have your data catalog that is behind everything, with the knowledge graph, with the data quality built on top of that, reference data management built on top of that, master data management built on top of that. So it kind of ties it all together to one solution that you can deploy in your organization, and it will provide you more benefits than just have loosely integrated software than we had before.
That makes sense, and I guess you may well have customers who are starting out who are very interested in data fabric, but they probably already have some legacy systems, perhaps a data catalog in place, or perhaps some sort of integrations across other metadata capabilities where they could either add a la carte just some of the modules for Ataccama versus jumping in with Ataccama 1. Or I guess there's the opportunity too for any customer of Ataccama to get their feet wet, perhaps with I think what you guys refer to as the knowledge catalog, and perhaps the data quality component, and then sort of add to that over time. To build on the platform around the master data management components or the reference data management. Is that right?
Yeah, that's a general idea. You can start small and then just extend with other components as you go. And right. The initial investment is as small as possible, but then everything that you invest into that tooling is reusable and will make the next step easier, right? So, for example, if you build a library of data quality rules and connect them to your data domains, then setting up your MDM on top of same domains just reuses that information. So you don't have to, do extended projects for all of them.
And that, I think sort of really gets into that, talking about like the starting point of a lot of organizations and, where they are. We tend to really start with an assessment or understanding current state from a consultation perspective. And this is, an approach from a consulting perspective, professional services coming in and wanting to understand what those pain points are, what those gaps are. We will come in, ask a few questions, hear about the pain points, understand, perhaps the current state tech stack, any data architecture that's in place, existing either integrations or existing even data quality or metadata management tools. When you have organizations that are sort of really starting at many different places, Marek, perhaps you can just sort of highlight where that customer can go if they want to then sort of build on and build out the data fabric. You mentioned, I think, that the metadata capture is certainly the most important step and really the foundational step, which makes a lot of sense. Now, does somebody have to have a sophisticated knowledge graph, or let's just say a sophisticated machine-assisted knowledge graph to basically piece together those relationships before they go down the path of sort of the broader data fabric? Or are there shortcuts? Are there ways that they can sort of move through certain layers of the data fabric, if you will?
Yeah, so actually that's a good opener for a conversation about the layers of the data fabric. But here's the general idea: you can start small. You can kind of try it out on less sophisticated solutions to see if the rest of the stack is up to date. But at the end, you will need to have certain characteristics of the solution available. So let me give you an example. Like if you look at any kind of a description of the parts of the data fabric that are required to build successful solutions, they are usually split into the layers, right? They are split into kind of these that you see on the screen, which you start with augmented data catalog, which is your AI ML driven data catalog with the knowledge graph with semantics. That's where you store all of that information in the machine readable, user readable way. And then you have a couple of layers around metadata activation and recommendation engines, which actually operate on top of the metadata to infer additional relationships of the metadata. Then you have final data preparation and orchestration layers. Now, these have some characteristics that needs to be there in order to deliver the data fabric. But as I said before, if you start with something lesser, you can still implement parts of the data fabric. So for example, if you have a data catalog that is not AI ML driven, that you have driven purely by users or doesn't have as much information, you can still create some automated delivery layer on top of that to test the delivery layer. The delivery layer will not be dynamic enough to serve all of your needs, but it's still better than manual one, right? The same goes with the knowledge graph. If it doesn't have an ability to capture all the necessary information, then you can start with that, but in the end, you will need something to have that have ability to capture generic information about your metadata, and most importantly, create relationships between them. Now, what is kind of a most scaling part of this is recommendation engines and metadata activation. Recommendation engines, metadata activation is something that you need in a data fabric, and it drives the automation on top of your knowledge graph. But you can start small. You can start with some automation processes built as an expert system, then later add some AI processing on top of that. And generally, this is the part where you will need to invest in even after you have data fabric already in place. This is the main part you will be investing in the future and in the future updates on that, because this is what basically has the biggest impact on the accuracy and usefulness of your data fabric, right? This is the kind of active part of your data fabric. Once you build correct knowledge graph and augmented data catalog, yes, you need to keep it in date. You need to invest a little bit into it, but it doesn't have as much impact as inferring additional metadata and keep them in sync through the metadata activation recommendation engines. This is what will be driving your costs in the future. And then a little bit about the data preparation, data delivery layer, and your orchestration that you will need to update based on the new technologies that your teams are working with, right? New storage systems come in, new processing systems come in, right? In later years, Snowflake came into market. Suddenly, everybody needed a kind of orchestration and processing around Snowflake, right? And you will need to update those in the future. So in general, you need to have kind of all of these layers to implement your data fabric. You can start smaller. You can start with something that is kind of a less automated to just figure out the concepts, because even without fully implemented data fabric, even partial data fabric will give you some benefits. But at the end, you will need all of this, and this is kind of the hardest part about the data fabric, right? It requires significant kind of architectural reimagining and investment. Not necessarily, money investment, but architectural investment to kind of rearrange your existing technology that is in your organization and wire it together correctly. So lead time to kind of tangible benefits of data fabric is usually longer. So it's not that easy to sell internally, sell in quotes internally to whoever is a stakeholder in your data management and data governance, right? That's why understanding the results and educating people about the results is a very important part of implementing data fabric, because it can take significant time until they see tangible benefits. But yeah, good thing is that once you are there and start seeing the benefits, then it accelerates really fast through your organization.
So that's a couple like really good points just to, I think, emphasize here. So first of all, your footnote there, it's possible to have all of these elements in place, but if it's not ultimately approached in just the right way, you're not necessarily taking advantage of the data fabric. So I think one, sort of question is, and I think there's a call out there to the principles of data fabric, is that where can people go to really understand the right approach or those principles of data fabric, how to go about implementing in a way that's efficient, that's going to sort of keep those lead times at a minimum, while also sort of getting to that time to value as quickly as possible. So I'll start there with that question, and then get to a couple of the other points that you emphasized.
Okay, so it is fairly similar to any kind of project implementation I've seen in the future. Start with a tangible use case and demonstrate on that what would be the benefits of the data fabric, right? It usually is some kind of like traditional use case, let's say taking care of your master data or exporting for a government reports or stuff like that. Think about that use case as kind of a first implementation of data fabric, and try mapping your systems to see which parts of the data fabric stack you already have. Try wiring them together in a correct way. Maybe it will not be correct. Maybe it will be janky in the beginning, right? It will just work to demonstrate whatever would be the benefits of the data fabric, and then hopefully you will get a more buy-in as you comment, right? So then actually important point here is that usually some of these parts you already have in organization. They are just not wired together correctly, right? You usually have some knowledge graph or data catalog, some kind of recommendation engine somewhere, maybe some orchestration layer, right? You can have all of these building blocks of the data fabric, but if not wired correctly, they will just not, serve the function of the data fabric. But just moving them around rewire it a little bit, reimagining how they should be working. You can, a lot of the times, use what you already have in an organization and build some prototype of the data fabric on top of that, even now.
So that's, yeah, and that's interesting. And I think perhaps what can be highlighted here is the point that you don't have to be starting from zero. You just essentially have to sort of take a holistic view and understand, what systems and what integrations you have in place today. Understand what matters most when it comes to your pain points and your business outcomes, and then make a determination as to where you want to put your priorities in terms of building onto the layers that Marek is showing here. And Marek, what I wanted to do is sort of get to a shameless plug, with my initial question. What we have found in the past with our clients, particularly as they have specific business outcomes that can be accelerated, but certainly can be addressed by a data fabric, is that we partner closely with Ataccama to help deliver on many of the data fabric principles. We have a methodology working with Ataccama One platform to help build in those layers, or just essentially fill the gaps that are necessary, and then providing the right approach, sequence of steps, if you will, after we understand sort of where those gaps are and where our priorities lie, to basically build on that data fabric. And so just quickly, as I've spoken about Ataccama, just a quick plug for myself and for Data Meaning. So I am the Director of Data Governance at Data Meaning. I've been building a data governance practice for a little while now. Data Meaning itself is a boutique consulting agency. We offer a full suite of BI, enterprise analytics, and data governance and data management solutions to help improve your business visibility. We deliver end-to-end analytics and data governance expertise, and can work with either your existing systems that are in place, even sort of work our way into your sort of existing methodologies without really necessarily forcing anything on you. But the idea is that we do partner with strategic technologies that we find to be cutting edge and to be sort of at the forefront of any one particular space. Hence why I'm talking with Marek today and reviewing the concept of a data fabric, and then how Ataccama One can essentially help you solutionize and accelerate the necessary process, people, and ultimately technologies to get you to that to the value that's promised by a data fabric. Yep. So one of the things that I wanted to just bring up, just sort of going back to one of the points that you had mentioned earlier, Marek, was just talking about the data fabric value proposition. And you had mentioned that there are no shortcuts, no silver bullets here, right? With technology, you really do have to think through organizationally, and you have to think through your process and the steps, and understand sort of where your gaps are to sort of build on these layers. With that, we know that there's going to be a cost component, and as a result, there's going to be a question ultimately around, what's your business case? Do you have some thoughts around how our audience can present a business case around a data fabric?
Right. So that's one of the hardest part of it, right? And that's when you call Data Meaning to help. Right. No, it's definitely something that, and I'm not kidding by calling Data Meaning to help, because consulting companies, and especially bespoke consulting that already implemented this in multiple different organizations, they try different approaches and they know what works, right? So they already, you are basically paying for experience from other projects to be delivered for you, right? So that's that's usually a good idea. And not no two organizations will be same, and it's kind of a not easy to kind of define or define that the like value proposition that will work for every organization, right? My and this is not a cop out, right? My advice here is to find uh, to find basically tangible process in your organization and what you are doing, and that process that is currently not efficient or not working as expected, or it's kind of a you know, old and not maintained anymore, and describe how it would change when implemented with a data fabric. And you know, this process will be different for every organization, even for different departments, but usually you have some pain points, and those pain points usually come from things like or from the area of reporting in the organizations, or from the area of some kind of data pipeline that is always failing and giving you problems, right? You have some critical data pipelines that are failing, and then you know, people are getting calls at 2 a.m. and then need to spend weekend to fix them. That's the process that you want to target and describe how it would benefit from the data fabric. But again, the process will be different from every organization, and I think data meaning may be better equipped to actually give you you know, answer to this question than me, because they have a
Yeah.
lot more experience.
Yeah, I appreciate that call out. I mean, look, I think in any case, something to understand is that there can be incremental value. And by that, I mean that as you're on your journey towards sort of really building out the full data, the complete data fabric, there is always going to be incremental value with capturing your metadata, with establishing, relationships across your many different analytic assets, to your business glossary, to understanding your data quality scores, and then using that as a feedback loop back into your data pipeline to understand change impact and so forth. I mean, all of these elements can be added over time, and there can be essentially these sort of incremental business use cases, if you will, or business cases that can be presented to get you to that, through that first step and to that initial value step before you go on to the next one. And so the reason I brought up a use case was that was actually, a business case was actually a question that was presented. Another quick questions. We're getting down to sort of 5 minutes left in the webinar here. Please, anybody else, feel free to sort of drop any questions as you have them. Are there certain industries that are more likely to need a data fabric, Marek, than others?
Ooh, yeah. I think right now everything is going in a way of data driven, right? So it's easy to say any kind of a data driven company will need something resembling data fabric, but where it actually would probably have the most benefits is the industries where they are capturing a lot of the data already and have been for years, but due to lack of correct processes, technology, or implementation, they are not able to leverage that. And those are usually industries around your financial institutions, or insurance, or industries around transportation. Airlines, for example, are a very good example where they can benefit much from the correct implementation data fabric. But also kind of a big retail chains. We've seen that benefit from this. But that's kind of from the part of like established players in the market, right? Like if you're an established player in the market and you have lot of data captures with a very disparate ecosystem. Like for example, if you have majority of these players have multi-cloud or hybrid ecosystems. That's where the correct metadata capture and automated data delivery makes most sense. But if you are new players on the market and you are just starting your journey and you are building your data backend or building your data governance, your data management, doing this from the beginning will save you a lot of trouble in the future, right? Because you will reach that size where this will start making sense eventually, right? Right now, if you are kind of a mid-sized company, sometimes it doesn't make sense from purely the kind of investment perspective, because it requires some investment and it's not always that easy. But on the other hand, sometimes in that case you are way more flexible to try new things that big companies. But yeah, usually industry wise, that's a financial industry, telcos, retail, insurance companies where this makes sense, where they are highly regulated and require some kind of governance, which is just on the size of their data not tenable to be done manually, right? And that's where you need to automate things.
Yeah, so where there's a sort of a level of complexity and perhaps some regulatory or compliance scrutiny. Sounds like that could be perhaps a core goal of some of those types of industries. I would agree. I think again, the idea that any organization that are taking actionable steps to understand where their core strategic data sources lie, understand perhaps relationships of those data sources back out to any analytic assets or any of your operational data, to get a better sense of how you can then organize or improve on data quality, is going to be a valuable step, regardless of whether you jump straight in, arms and feet with looking to build a data fabric or not. So, the idea of Ataccama having each of these components or these, these specific building blocks, if you will, that can very easily help you capture your metadata, that can then use this machine-assisted augmentation to help you start to build out the relationships of, across your various data sources and assets. And then really, I think, as sort of Marek highlighted, kind of activate that metadata and make it sort of more available, more consumable, and then certainly more actionable, to drive your analytics, to drive your decision making, to drive your insights, and to make your data consumers more successful. I think that ultimately is where Ataccama is going with all of this, and where ultimately the data fabric and the concept of the data fabric is going. So yep. With that, Marek, I just think, do you have any sort of final thoughts to leave with our audience before we wrap up?
Oh, my final thought is maybe more philosophical. Try to be open-minded. Try to envision how this can help you, and find that use case that is most pressing, that keeps people up at night, and try implement this with the data fabric, and find the good partners for that. That's the thought here.
appreciate that. So Marek, I want to thank you for your time today. This has been great insight, particularly around the data, the topic of the data fabric. Clearly you have a lot of insight and thoughts around the idea of a data quality fabric, and what Ataccama can provide as a solution, around a single platform to drive that out. From the data meaning side, as I said, we've been working with Ataccama for some time now, helping our customers to strategically build in those building blocks towards those important business outcomes from a data governance and a data management perspective. So if there are any other questions, feel free to hit us up on LinkedIn. I think there could be opportunities to sort of either ask questions there or maybe a little bit more on this on this Zoom session. But otherwise, I want to wrap it up. Thanks again, and looking forward to maybe getting you back, Marek, at a future session so we can dig into data quality a bit more.
Yep. Nice being here. Thanks for this opportunity. See you next time.
Thank you all. Take care.